Democrat Party's return to Chicago is a return perhaps to the past, some good times and some bad times in our past. One headline asks, will this DNC be more disastrous like the 1968 one or celebratory like 1996? Doug Schoen, a former Clinton advisor, is with me now in Focus. And Doug, here we are in Chicago, and we're finally seeing all of this come together. And Vice President Kamala Harris is being greeted by, I guess you could say it was predictable, but are you surprised at how many potentially could be here?
I am surprised at the vehemence and the numbers, Harris. I also participated in what was called the celebratory 96 convention, which helped my client Bill Clinton won. And I also remember 68, which played a singular role in the defeat of Hubert Humphrey in that year's election. So this could be decisive, Harris. And I would say what Alderman Lopez said reflects the broad feeling of much, not all, but much of the Democratic Party.
Right.
And what Mayor Johnson said, frankly, goes well beyond the First Amendment to encouraging a level of protest and discord that I think is not helpful and not constructive.
So what is the point of courting this part of the party? I mean, really, when you look percentage-wise, can Democrats win without them is one question. And the other is, can you ever really satiate them? Can you ever really be enough as Kamala Harris, vice president for 3.5 years, to suddenly flip the switch to do something these people want that she hasn't already done?
Harris, those are great questions. First, you can never sate these people. They want Israel eliminated. They want to kill the Jews. The vast majority are anti-Semites. And to your first question, as a practical political analyst, you're darn straight you can win without them. There might be a few voters in Michigan that are potentially at risk because they're Arab voters. But across the country, people want the Democrats to stand up against protests, for law and order, and for the state of Israel. And we need the hostages back. We need a peace treaty that works for the only stable democratic ally we have in the Middle East. And I very much hope that my party has a backbone and a spine for both substantive and political reasons.
It's interesting. You say that Democratic voters want that. Everybody wants that. That's part of the problem and why Biden was losing to Donald Trump, and potentially why Kamala Harris could still lose. No matter what the polls say now, this is a huge issue for them. And again, the question is, what does she do and say here on the ground? Because you can't just ignore it. Let's move to this. Some headlines today. The radical protesters who plan to shut down the DNC for Gaza. And from the New York Post editorial board, there's this. Dems deserve the anti-Israel rioters they have created. An excerpt here. The Hamas-loving chickens are coming home to roost for the Democratic Party. These leftist goons could not be telling Democrats any louder, we expect you to kneel to our demands, and kneel is all Democrats have been doing. Instead of telling these radicals to kick rocks, they've coddled, placated, and encouraged them. Look, I don't want you to repeat yourself, Doug Schoen, so let's take it in a different direction. So Republicans see this, and this is an opportunity to really do what they've always been doing, and that is have a great relationship with Israel, have Israel's back, talk about the future, how you get Iran to stand down, something that recently when asked, President Biden said, I don't know if they will, but I hope so. I mean, I don't even know what that is. What is your thought about what Republicans can do in this moment?
Well, I thought what President Trump said last week about standing up for Israel, resisting Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranians, the Houthi rebels, was a very good and constructive statement. And to go directly to your question, Kamala Harris has to indicate by word and deed that she supports those policies, that she is not trying to play it down the middle. No, I don't, and I'm worried about that, and it makes me doubt my party in the same way I did in 2016.
You were with me. We were right on set when you said, nope, I've reached a point. I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton. And you were in the White House of her husband. So I know you mean it. All right. One protest leader of the march on the DNC said this just a few minutes ago because they're at that news conference. Let's watch.
Genocide Joe Biden allows him to do it. Make no mistake. Joe Biden can turn off that tap of money and funding immediately. He could do it right now. He could have done it back in October. The fact that he didn't means he supports this genocide, that he's got the blood of 40,000 Palestinians on his hands.
And that means that Kamala Harris has that too, in that man's opinion. So is the Democrat Party at a stuck point?
Yeah, the Democrats have to denounce people like that, thinking like that, speeches like that. There's no choice. That is outrageous. We need a Democratic Party that fulfills its historical mission to support Israel. And if not, then a lot of Democrats like me will not be able to fully embrace the Harris-Walz ticket and the bottom of the ticket as well. This is a fundamental issue for Jewish Americans, but all Americans, as you quite rightly point out, Harris.
Wow, that's a lot. We'll see what happens. We'll cover every second of it. Glad I'm here to witness this part of history. President Biden will take the DNC stage tonight, and it's been what I call his final act, really. It's after his own party shoved him out of the race. And remember, he name-checked Nancy Pelosi in terms of his exiting. He didn't blame her, but he did drop her name in that conversation. Now it's nothing but love ahead of one of the big nights, the last nights politically for him.
This is a man who's accomplished more in 3.5 years than most presidents get done in 8. So we're going to see a celebration of him.
There is going to be so much love for Joe Biden. There's going to be tears of joy when he walks into that hall. And what he has done, he literally saved our democracy in the U.S. He beat Donald Trump.
Joe Biden, I believe, will go on the Democratic Mount Rushmore with FDR, with President Kennedy, with President Truman, and with LBJ. He's also put himself in a position now to be remembered for the one job that he left. And it's a job that he's left for Kamala Harris to finish as she picks up that torch and runs with it.
Ahead of the president's expected hero's farewell, CNN writes this: Democrats gather to enshrine their stunning turn from Biden to Harris. President Biden will not stick around for the rest of the week's festivities, we have learned. He will not hear speeches from his former boss, Barack Obama, or former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Those two were reportedly instrumental in kicking him out, and it's reportedly still a very touchy subject. You think? He will also be more than 2,000 miles away in California when Kamala Harris accepts the Democratic nomination on Thursday night. A New York Times column: the Dems are delighted, but a coup is still a coup. She argues that the DNC is going to be a glorious coronation, except that everyone's mad at one another. Doug, wow.
Yeah, I think the Democrats have huge challenges healing the wounds, but also something else, Harris, articulating a vision and specific policies that so far we have not heard. It's all well and good to talk about passing the torch, but if we have no idea what the torch is being passed to accomplish or for what reasons, it is a hollow victory.
Real quickly, I'm thinking in that speech, which will be on a teleprompter. I mean, we can see the whole setup from here. And that isn't dissimilar to others who've accepted the nomination in both parties. That's not the point. But the point is, if it doesn't have some of what you're talking about in it, she's not likely to ad-lib it in anyway. Real quick, last thought.
Yeah, this is a totally scripted process. I think the Democrats will probably get a modest benefit from it and go into Labor Day ahead by 4, 5, 6 points. But the real campaign will start September 10th with the debate when she has to get off the teleprompter and confront her principal adversary, President Donald Trump.
Well, we've heard it. Concern and maybe a little disbelief in what lies ahead for your political party, the Democrats. I always like you unscripted. Right. So thank you. Good to see you.
Always.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.